Good morning. The poem I decided to discuss today is Churning Day by Seamus Haney. This is one of his many poems that he wrote about his childhood, and this poem refers to how he churned butter with his family, and it's a very reminiscent poem um, that has a lot of different aspects. So first, I will be talking about the title. So the title of the poem, once again, is Churning Day, and this title refers to how this process of churning this butter, which is what they're churning, um, is not going to be just a little small process. It's not going to be a quick process. It's not going to take an hour or two. It will take a whole day for them to churn this butter. Um, so that's the title. And then one of the biggest things is the shift. And in the first half of the poem, we see how it's a lot of tough imagery, a lot of how it shows a lot of hard work. And in the second half, it's kind of slowed down. It's kind of um, soft imagery, and it shows of completion. But one of the biggest themes in this poem is hard work pays off in the end. And so I'll talk about the first half of the poem before the shift, and I will talk about the imagery first. So in the first line, it says, a thick crust, coarse grained as limestone rough cast. And that refers to, like, it kind of goes back to how the hard work was. As you can see, it's kind of like a kuka type of thing, which is a cacophony. And so that, like, it's a tough, not tough, but it's a hard, like, sound. So it kind of goes back to how the hard work and how hard in that sound is hard. So yes, also it talks about harden gradually, which also goes back to the tough imagery, the hardness of it. Um, let's see. Also, um, if you go down, it talks about how his mother took first turn, and how she set up rhythms that slugged and thumped for hours, how arms ached and hands blistered, and how the cheeks and clothes were spattered with flabby milk, the arms aching and the hands blistering. That all shows how tough and how rough this work was. And yes, it was hard, but as we go down, we're going to see how it paid off. Um, and then yeah, so then also the tone of the poem. So in this first half, the tone is progressive. It's kind of anticipating. So in the way that it's progressive is that it it's like they're preparing for the day. So for example, um, they set up the hoop churn that was scoured with plumbing kettles and busy scrubber, and the busy scrubber echoed daintily on the seasoned wood. That kind of shows the anticipation. And then the staff, like a great whiskey muddler fashioned in deal wood, was plunged in the lid fitted. That also refers back to how they were progressing to this final product. um, let's see. Another thing is back to the tough imagery. Um, we have, it says, after the hot brewery of gland cud and udder. That refers to how hard the labor was of milking the cow, because a cow eats the cud and the udder. So that refers back to that. Let's see. Another thing that I found in this first half of the poem is that it talks about the hot brewery, and it also talks about how the staff is like a great whiskey muddler, which that second one is a simile. But I refer to these two as like alcohol imagery, like since Heaney grew up in Ireland, which he happens to be the speaker for this poem. He, he grew up in Ireland, and in Ireland, alcohol was a big business, especially during like St. Patrick's Day and stuff like that. And so I thought of it as like, since alcohol was a big business in Ireland, it could also be a big business. Like the butter business for their family could have also been big as well, and that's why it was so important for them to churn the butter and to make sure they do it correctly, so that they could keep the business up. Um, let's see. Okay, so then the mood for this poem is basically let's see. The mood for this poem is like kind of dreading the reader is feeling like, oh well, they're taking a long time. It's so hard for them to put this work into this churning the butter. And so, but eventually the mood and the tone does change later on in the poem. And so now I will go to the second half of the poem where they're talking about. So one thing is that the diction changes in this second half. For example, it says where the finally golden flakes begin to dance. When you think of dancing, for the most part, you think of it as like smooth. You think of it as just moving smoothly, and and that adds a softer diction of it. Also, it says in the fourth stanza, it talks about how the butter is in soft printed slabs, and that also, of course, it says the word soft, so it adds to that soft diction that's in there. Also, there is gold diction in this second half. So basically, it talks about the gold flecks, and as we know, gold is very valuable, especially like in general. Like, it's just very valuable. So them being able to see the gold flecks and seeing this butter turning into what it is, it adds to this idea of gold. Let's see. And also they talk about how the it's heaped up like gilded gravel in the bowl, and that talks about like you know in America they gilded up the gravel for the in the rivers and stuff, so that adds to the idea of how it was very important to them. And at the end they talk about how their brains were turned crystal full of clean deal churns, and that shows how they were satisfied with their work, and how even though their house stunk like a sulfur mine, they were very proud of their work and they were happy they got it finished. And